Hello, friends, and thank you so much for joining Coffee Chat with Shelley. I'm so excited to be here with you today to encourage us all to live happier, more creative lives as we get older. We want to make our Act Two better than ever. Now, joining me today for our July Coffee Chat, we have educator and writer Mantequilla Green, who is also my childhood friend. I'm so excited to have her with me to talk about her new book and her creative life as she moves into her 50s. Welcome, Mantequilla.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to be with you today.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you about your new book. Now, you are a longtime educator, and now you're adding inspirational writer to your resume. This book is so amazing and encouraging. How did you feel being a part of such a wonderful project?
It was more life-changing than I expected. I was asked by the publisher, well, as she was writing or wrapping up publishing the first book in the series, and I heard her, but I didn't hear her, right? So I heard her say, I want you to be a part of the second book. It went here, it went out here, and I went on about life. And then the retreats started to happen, and it was inviting me to the retreats, and I went, and it was really impactful. Not only was I connected to other women who were doing amazing things in their lives and are doing amazing things in their lives, it was, I think, interesting to me to find that I did have something to say, and that what I had to say centered around what I do for work, right? And then as we went along in the process, as I started to connect with my students, because my chapter is told basically from their point of view, in a sense, it was humbling to learn what that experience was like to have Miss Green as a teacher. And it's still humbling because I'm still learning. And so it was more transformative than I would have ever imagined.
Have you always been a writer?
Always. So I will tell you a tidbit that you don't know. When I was about 5, I would write new scripts and pretend to read them. And then I had an experience, my stepdad that just passed away a year ago, when he and my mother started dating when I was little, I was 8. He asked me, what did I want to do when I grew up? And I said, I want to be a journalist. And he says, is there anyone that you particularly like? And I said, I love Gail Leith-Schaller. And as you know, Gail was the Black news anchor for KLTV at the time.
Right.
And he says, well, I know Gail, so if you'd like to write her a letter, I'll give it to her. So I wrote Gail a letter, and I was meticulous about that thing without even knowing what meticulous was.
Yes.
And he said, he came back and he said, did you ever write the letter? And I said, yes. And he said, well, if you'd like to read it to me, I'll listen to you. So I read it to him, and he said, well, I'll be happy to give it to her. So he gave it to her, but I never heard from Gail anymore. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to 6th grade. 6th grade in my class, my teacher decides that we are going to interview each other. And we did that, and it was videotaped, and that sealed the deal for me. I was like, I'm going to be a journalist. Shortly after that, a young woman by the name of Rochelle Jackson ends up on KLTV. And that was profound for me because I knew Rochelle personally, and Rochelle knew me. And I could see Rochelle at any point in the neighborhood, in the grocery store, at church. It didn't matter. She would know who I was. And that, I think that was God's way of saying, you can do this. And there's people in the business that look just like you and know you. And so I could ask questions. I remember sitting next to you in church and asking you questions about what you did. And it was, and I was like, this is it for me. And from that point forward, journalism was all I was going to do. And it didn't turn out exactly the way that I wanted. I did not get to professionally practice as a journalist, but I did have an opportunity to work for an award-winning newspaper when I was in college. They are still award-winning today.
Wow.
And right after that, I ended up teaching journalism. And so a lot of the connection that I have with the students that I have come from that. They are my yearbook journalism students. They hung out there because that's kind of what happens when you do yearbook and newspaper on a high school level.
Yes.
They're home. And so some of them will tell you I spent more time with Miss Green than I did with my own parent. And that's true.
Yes.
And so we created a family that we still have to this day from those days. And so did I always want to be a writer? Absolutely.
Yes.
I just didn't know that it would transpire this way.
And sometimes that's how God works it out,
Mm-hmm.
where you're reaching other people and you're helping them accomplish their dreams and their goals.
Right.
You're living vicariously through them in a way, but now you have your own dream of being a writer. So I think this is a great segue for us to get a look at your book, and maybe you read us a little excerpt from it.
Sure. So this is what I'm going to read is one of the students. He was my one. So you know how you have that one student that you probably know their first, middle, last name, social security number, all on the first day of school. He was that one for me.
Okay.
and he was not a troublemaker, good kid, but just was misguided in a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, just kind of needed a space, right? And so this part is what he says. Being in your class was safe. We knew it was safe because you cared about us individually. We weren't numbers or metrics or whatever it is teachers are graded on. We were just yours, and we felt safe because we were yours. That sense of security allowed us to learn, and allowed us to even learn about things that we may not have thought was even designed for us. The inner workings of journalism isn't the choice subject for the Latino Black kid from Northside Fort Worth. Some of us needed more than curriculum for the hour and a half we were there in your class. Some of us needed breaks from home, breaks from the neighborhood, breaks from work, breaks from just outright existing in the world that surrounded us. Some of us just needed to know that someone cared and that we were safe and that someone was you. It was clear God was using my journalism and English classes to make a difference in the lives of my students.
That was so beautiful. Oh my goodness. Can you show us the cover?
Sure. This is the cover. Let's see if I can get it.
Yes.
Yes, this is the cover.
Embracing Wisdom on the Walk.
Yep.
Yes. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Before we leave, let's talk about how our viewers can find your book.
Sure.
But I wanted to ask you this. So you were able to immerse yourself in your writing life with your work experience.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you encourage others who want to write over 50? How would you encourage them to get involved and get into their writing if that's what they desire to do?
There are writing clinics, writing workshops, writing retreats that happen all over the place. In fact, Walking with Lori or Wisdom on the Walk is actually having a retreat July 12th in Grapevine. Mm-hmm. And so you can go to Wisdom on the Walk and you can find, in fact, I'll post it on my Facebook page. There's a link right now that you can go to, but there are workshops and there are writing clinics that happen all the time. I can tell you for myself, one of the reasons that writing was easy for me, because I hadn't written in quite some time outside of what I do for academics. But I have journaled my entire adult life. I have every journal that I've ever written from the time I was 21 until now. So that's a 30-year period.
Wow.
So some of these experiences I had forgotten about. So I was able to come into my office, grab my journals, look at my journals to look at what it was that I was thinking about, what was I praying about, what was I concerned about, and what happened since then. And so some of these things were brought back to memory, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But I could remember it from looking at my journals. I would encourage people to journal. For me, it was a release of whatever I was going through, or just a way for me to do a brain dump, if you will, put my thoughts on paper, and then I could go on about the day. And then that can turn into something that becomes published. But I would encourage people to find a writing clinic, find a workshop, journal, and then the connections will come.
That's awesome. That is such great advice. And I would agree with all of that. So you're a writer, but you are also an educator / administrator. Let's
Right.
talk a little bit about what you do every day.
Every day is a different day. I am a middle school administrator, so I am in process of moving up with my sixth graders who will be eighth graders when school starts. And so I have a picture that I'm going to put up in my office of them in the hallway outside of my office when they were sixth graders eating pizza, and it was 466 of them. Right, all sitting on the floor eating pizza. It was a reward that I had promised. If they weren't behavior concerns, and they weren't, they literally took me at my word. So I ordered a ton of pizza, and they sat on the floor and watched Elf, and I have that picture, so I'm going to put it up in my office this year. Being an administrator is challenging because you have to make connections with all stakeholders. That means parents, that means teachers, that means the kids themselves, that means people outside of the school who would come into the school watching what you do. And you have to be able to have relationships with all of these people. And so I have been intentional about making sure that I connected with those students. So what I would do when they were sixth graders, they all had PE. So I would show up at random in their PE classes, and I'd take about 15, 20 minutes of time just to have a conversation. And from that, they learned me. They knew me. And so what's happened is what typically doesn't happen in an administrator's office. Kids typically stay away from the assistant principal. Mine don't. They come into my office. They always have, and it's their safe space, right? So I have fudge balls or like fur balls there for them just to kind of calm down. And I'm the person that they want to consistently connect with, right? And so it's been an amazing transformation. So because they were close to me, their parents have become close to me. And so we have this, it feels like a family, really. They know that if discipline comes, we got to do discipline, but discipline may look differently. So we may use a restorative approach, but they know the expectations are high. But they also know that I'll cheer them on at whatever it is that they are doing.
Yes. And that is so beautiful. And I just love that you are sharing your love for children and now your love for writing. It's a beautiful story, and I'm just so excited for you to have your creative life over 50. So I hope that you guys enjoyed our coffee chat today. We want you to live creative, healthy, and happy lives. If you enjoyed this chat, please like and subscribe to Shelley's Creative Life. And until our next chat, stay creative, friends. Bye-bye.